as time went on and as the fame and the money started rolling in again, his behavior changed. He thought he was better than us. He thought he didn't need us. He would have yes men around him. He preferred to hang out with them. We weren't doing drugs. I'm sure the people he was hanging around with were. And the attitude just became very nasty, misogynistic.
My next guest is a fashion photographer whose work has featured in British Vogue, in Rolling Stone, NME, to name but a few. But in 2017, she worked for Tommy Robinson, the founder of the English Defence League. And Lucy Brown joins us this evening. Lucy, welcome to Times Radio.
Hi. Weird intro, but yeah, hi.
Well, it's kind of quite a kind of surprise to hear about the work that you did, given the work you now do. Just take us back to the beginning. How did you come to start working for Tommy Robinson?
Well, obviously, I'm from Cambridge. I'm from a very liberal background. I didn't fit the mold at all. But in 2017, there was, if you remember, terror attack after terror attack after terror attack. There was quite a lot of terror attacks going on around Europe. And the overarching kind of theme was that we are not allowed to talk about certain issues. And I was struggling. I used to work for a post-production company in East London that was, again, like full of very liberal, very tolerant people who I noticed were saying things about Donald Trump, that he should be assassinated and, that kind of thing. And if I said anything about, I don't know, immigration, or I actually joined Black Lives Matter initially, and I found that there was some kind of racism in that side of things too, but people didn't want to hear about that. And just over time, I just felt very frustrated, and I ended up meeting a couple of guys called George and Kaylin, who were around the same age as me, and they were working with kind of media. They were making their own sort of gotcha interviews where they would go to like the feminist march. They would ask them, what do you think about this? What is it about Trump you don't like? And they wouldn't answer the questions very well. And it was just, if you remember that period of YouTube, they used to call it SJW owned, kind of, that was the kind of trend at the time. I met these guys. They were interviewing Tommy Robinson as part of their YouTube channel. We met in a pub one day, one fated day in Chelsea. And at that time, we all seemed to be of the opinion that we were not being told necessarily all the facts about these terror attacks. That is how it felt. I'm not sure if it was true, but that's how it felt at the time. Obviously, I look back and there's a lot of things I'm ashamed of for that period of time. But it was the terror attacks that made me happen in a way. And I would say it was also far left extremism that we were seeing in places like Berkeley, and riots across the states, Trump supporters having rocks thrown at their heads on Inauguration Day. So there was a lot of things looking back that contributed to my strange timeline.
A strange timeline, as you describe it. You also, just a moment ago, described yourself as a liberal, a progressive, a Black Lives Matter supporter at one point. So how does someone with all of those credentials end up meeting and working with Tommy Robinson? What was he like when you first met him?
Not what I thought he would be, honestly. He had black friends. He was very chatty there'll be Muslims coming up talking to him in the street. He would chat to them. It was mainly white liberals that would shout at him, and it was mainly people with brown skin that would engage with him, and he would engage with them in quite a respectful way. And it was something that I suppose I didn't expect from him. And then the way that he, I read his book, Enemy of the State, and then I watched the Oxford Speech Union thing that he did. And then there was a lot of videos online that were kind of Tommy Robinson owns journalists. I don't know if you remember those kind of things, but they gave the impression of a kind of David and Goliath character that's been lied about, that's secretly been trying to, help Britain, but the establishment wants to silence him and all this kind of thing. And, there's some truth to that, but some of it is a myth. And I think that myth is very prevalent among his supporters today. I think there's a reason why people really do see him as some kind of, like a hero, unfortunately.
What was your role whilst working with Tommy Robinson? What were you employed to do?
Well, I'd do things like I'd do camera work, we would do script writing, we were having people messaging us from all over the country, telling us about these horrible crimes that were being committed. It was our job to kind of filter through and see where we could be of assistance. So we would go to places like Sunderland, or I don't know, just kind of areas that have been kind of negatively affected by certain crimes. I will say that some of the stuff that came out, looking back, wasn't necessarily what it said on the tin. So it was a strange time, and some of it was real, and some of it I think was him stretching and bending the truth a bit, and that's what I think he's gone on to do. I think that's where we are now with him. I'm sad in a way. I think that him having, a middle-class woman and a gay couple working for him was quite good, because we controlled, the message, and we would talk to him about, we shouldn't keep having protests. We should be doing journalism. We should be interviewing people. We should be, become the media was our kind of mantra. But yeah, I don't know. Sorry, it's a long mess, and it was a long time ago. But
at what point did the alarm bells start to ring, and you realised it wasn't quite what you had perhaps been led to believe?
Definitely, as we used to joke that he was like Imhotep from the Mummy, and we needed to put him back where he came from. We kind of made him famous again. He wasn't very famous when we first met him. We kind of reignited that, and it wasn't pleasant. But then as time went on, and as the fame and the money started rolling in again, his behavior changed. He thought he was better than us. He thought he didn't need us. He would have yes men around him. He preferred to hang out with them. We weren't doing drugs. I'm sure the people he was hanging around with were. And the attitude just became very nasty, misogynistic. He called me a snowflake for just little things like, and calling me a lefty. And eventually,
would you challenge him? Was that why? Were you challenging some of his political views?
I would challenge him. I was particularly incensed after the Finsbury Park mosque attack, when he was interviewed by Sky News, and instead of focusing on the fact that a Muslim grandfather lost his life in that attack and taking any responsibility, Tommy was just in PR damage control mode. And I had a massive go at him. I remember sending him this like mad voice note, just like, what the hell are you doing? This is disgusting. We need to take responsibility. Is this not what you accuse the Muslim community of, of blaming it on a lone wolf? It's nothing to do with us. And yet here you are doing that, and someone's lost his life. And yeah, he laughed at me and said, "Oh, the media are always the enemy. They're always the enemy. You've always got to remember that." And it just got to the point where, it just was not good. And then it all came to a head in 2018. We had an event in central London called the Day for Freedom. He invited a Muslim chap to come and give a speech. I think he then realized that his football lad contingent were going to attack this man if he got on stage. And so what did he do? He told me to go and disinvite the man who turned up, who then got attacked by Tommy's supporters. So I had to face these people up close. I tried to protect the Muslim gentleman as much as I could. I got hit by one of the supporters in the process. And after that, Tommy blamed me, because I'm obviously a lefty, and set his fans on me. So I've had 6 years of Tommy Robinson fans stalking, harassing, death threats, and then some. So that's where we are.
Lucy, how did your friends and family react to the line of work you were doing? Because as you mentioned, up until this point, you were working with fairly liberal, progressive media types. You had been a supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement. What was the response from your loved ones when you said you were working with Tommy Robinson?
Oh, that's it. I've lost a lot of friends. There's a lot of people. There's weddings I didn't get invited to. There's children I'll never see grow up. I still have a very strained relationship with extended members of my family. Just a few months ago, I had to move out of a place that I was living because the girls Googled me, and I had to do what's known as a struggle session, where I basically sat in front of them crying and apologizing, but the damage was done. It causes problems with, I can't work again, really, in the fashion industry. I think that's out the window. So yeah, I'm sort of very frustrated watching these riots from afar, because I do think that there was a chance, there was some wiggle room for some sensible conversations. And unfortunately, I am a product of Tommy's misinformation in a sense. I have felt the wrath of misinformation. So I'm very concerned about how this is going to affect the Muslim community, because we've seen he holds the big shiny red button from Spain, and he knows that he can press it, and he is pressing it. And it's just very concerning and very, very depressing, to be honest with you.
Tommy Robinson not in Spain, I think, just to correct one point, as
Cyprus.
Far as we're aware, yeah, in Cyprus. You talked about feeling ashamed now, looking back at some of the work that you had done, and you also mentioned making Tommy Robinson essentially famous. Do you feel responsibility in any way when you see the sort of scenes we've seen across the country in recent days? Does that feel like you have in any way played a part in enabling that to happen?
No, I feel like that was the scenes that we're seeing are the very thing that we were trying to stop by creating independent journalism, by giving people voices, by raising awareness of issues that we felt that the media weren't addressing maybe enough. And this is what we wanted to prevent. And I would say that Tommy's ego has led to it just devolving. And if you see the people around him now, his team, they are all fanning the flames of this. He's got this assistant now who I suppose is my replacement, called Danny Tomo, who was going on Telegram and saying that whole cities should be going up in flames and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I just consider this a great shame. It makes me weep seeing the images that we've seen over the weekend, makes me sick. And it was preventable. I think it was preventable in many ways. The media maybe didn't help. But yeah, I don't know. It's very disgusting and shocking to see.
Okay, Lucy, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you very much for joining us this evening and speaking so candidly. I should say we can't verify some of what we've heard just there, but Lucy Brown, a fashion photographer who once called Tommy Robinson her boss, joining us on the programme tonight.